Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you.
Tonight was one of those nights that I think of as quietly messy. Like, there were not that many people out on the street, but the ones that were out there were acting a fool. And I know my night was not nearly as bad as some of the other tour guides. Like, I was at one point maintaining three conversations on three different messenger apps with three different groups of tour guides asking what the hell was up with the city today. And one of my friends is sure it was the Swingers convention. And yeah, the Swingers, it seems, are in town. We had a few of them on the tour, but most of what happened to me tonight, I cannot blame on the Swingers. Mostly for me, it was just people being loud in annoying ways. Like the first stop, the place I usually do it, there was somebody with a stand set up that was just blasting bounce music. And that's fun. It makes it really hard to do a story. So I took us across the street, and my back was to Rampart, therefore I missed the moments of actual fun. There was one moment that my guest went, oh, she's naked. And I turned to look, and I see a woman that's on the back of a motorcycle, like she's in, like, clinging on to someone who's actually steering the motorcycle, and I could see that she's a woman and she's not wearing much, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what they're talking about. And it wasn't until after the tour that one of my fellow tour guides messaged and was talking about her, and no, it turns out she was buck-ass naked. Like, not a stitch of clothing on her body. Which, public service announcement, whether you want to have fun or not, whether you're into exhibitionism or not, it's not a great idea to ride a motorcycle while naked, especially not on wet roads in a city that is super humid. Like, there are multiple reasons you don't want those bits against the motorcycle, and there are reasons that you don't want to risk falling down on the streets of New Orleans when you don't have any protective gear on. But I do think she was wearing a helmet. I might have missed that, but I think she was wearing a helmet. But yeah, so that was a fun incident. But the rest of my tour was mostly just the normal random people screaming moments. Like, there was a guy that, when we were at Marie Laveau's, and there were so many tours there tonight at the same time. Like, it used to be, it would just be one or two tours there at any given time. And I don't know, all of us tour guides have somehow coordinated so that we're all there at the exact same time now. And so it was difficult to find a spot, and we were all trying to squeeze in, and then a guy went by just screaming at the top of his lungs, and like, I was just finishing, so I was walking away, and so like, I'm trying to signal my guest, don't interact with him, ignore him and keep moving. And like, especially considering I can hear what he's screaming is, say something to me, yeah, any of you say something to me, I'll fuck you up. And at one point, he walks by a couple who I'm assuming is unaffiliated with him, and he starts like shouting at the guy, "Yes, say something to me, you motherfucker!" And like, the couple quickly cuts across the road, and I'm sitting there being like, "Okay, we're gonna let them by so that they can get into the bar to get away from him, and we're gonna keep walking quickly." And luckily, at that point, the dude turned and walked the other direction, though he might have walked back to join all the other groups and yell at them more. I know that Jeremy had a bad time there tonight. But there was also a guy who was talking to himself when I was trying to do the Lafitte's Blacksmith Shop, and he was perfectly fine. He was not screaming anything bad. He was just talking to himself full volume the entire time. And a couple of my guests looked really nervous, and I'm like, he is perfectly harmless. And then at, I think it was the Ursuline Convent, so a couple of the other spots, there were also people just screaming nothing or screaming random things. As we were walking between two of the stops, someone just like leans out their driver's side window and screams, "Fucking boo!" And I'm like, okay, dude. But for me, the kicker was, as I'm messaging with everybody on the walk back to my car, which I had turned down another tour guide who had given me an offer to drive me to my car. I'm like, no, it's fine. And I get a couple blocks away, and it's the area where there aren't that many people. It's a quiet area. And I'm like, oh, cool, there's no one around to save me if something goes wrong. And I hear, like, around the corner that I'm walking towards, a guy screaming, "Fuck you! I'll fuck you up! I ain't the fucking cops!" And then a loud bang, which I recognize as someone punching a door. And I'm like, oh, okay. I need to get across the street and keep going. And when I get to the street, I realize he's coming the other direction because things echo weirdly in the French Quarter. So sometimes you're like, oh, that's off this direction. And no, it's the other direction. So I was looking the wrong way and I turn and he's right there, like maybe 6 feet from me, punching a door. And I'm like, oh, and luckily there happen to be two other random guys walking by at the same time. And they look at me with that clear, like, do you need to be escorted somewhere? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to keep moving by. And I keep moving, and as I'm walking away, in the distance I hear, I ain't fucking Beyonce! I'm like, what the hell did Beyonce have to do with any of this shit? But one of my other friends was messaging me. Their group had had a lovely time when he was walking by. I think he said it was on Bourbon. There was a guy with a cart loaded down with dildos that his group found really entertaining. And when he messaged me, he said he was on Decatur and there was a couple, presumably, walking down the street with the guy significantly ahead of the girl, and the girl just screaming, you like dicks? You got a dick? This guy likes dicks. He likes white dicks. He likes black dicks. He likes all sorts of dicks. And I'm like, yeah, didn't see that one. So, yeah, I'd say maybe swingers, maybe just drugs, maybe the humidity isn't helping things, but people acting wild out there, please keep your clothes on. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to check out my book, Drunks of the French Quarter Theater, available on Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, pretty much wherever.